Well, and now we have a change of pace. Well, another homegrown talk. We'll have now a master's student, Tyler Burkett, who's going to tell us all about hackathons, which is a great name. And I'm sure the subject will live up to its great name. So take it away, Tyler. And Tyler, you are muted at the moment.
Right. Let me just get the screen pulled up here. Can everyone see that fine?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. So yeah, like Dr. Finkel said, I'm here to talk about hackathons, particularly also their benefits as well to people involved with it. The reason I'm talking about this is because I, since last year, am the ACM Cat Hacks chair for the UKY ACM group. So what that means is that my entire job is to just focus on hackathons, specifically our Cat Hacks, which is coming up in about 2 weeks, and just getting that organized and all together. So I figured I'd present a talk about it just to kind of introduce people who might be newer to it. So like I said, I'm going to discuss, what is a hackathon, benefits from these people, participants, sponsors, etc. How to join one of these events if you ever find yourself interested in one, and then how to start one yourself if you, like I say, if you ever become interested in that as well. So first, what is a hackathon? Well, at minimum, it's just a coding competition that, essentially people come together, they form teams or in individual groups, and they spend a short amount of time, usually a weekend, but typically it's between 24 to 48 hours, and they just kind of crack away at a project during that amount of time, and by the end try to have something that's functional and working and tries to make it look as cool as possible. But it's much more than that, though. And in addition to that, there's also workshops about technical aspects of the project as well. There's usually workshops on Python programming, GitHub, NVIDIA, all kinds of different things. Additionally, there's also mini events. These are sort of non-coding related, typically events like that, such as, like at a physical one, you might have some like board games or like cup stacking or something like that. At a digital one, which is what we're doing this year as well, you might have events that are, online games. I think an example we use like Jackbox games. It's a nice party game. Only one person has to buy it. Everyone else can just join in. And we also additionally do like a mini programming competition as well. It's not related to the projects at all. It's just a nice little event, and they're there just to kind of break up the monotony of like just working on something the entire time. Also, there are what we call like prizes and swag as well. Because besides just, if you submit a project and you win, you get first through third place, for example, you get a prize for that. But there's also many other categories as well of prizes you can win. There are categories, for example, like best solo hack if people are working by themselves. There's best use of insert API here kind of projects that you can try and create and submit for prizes as well. And like I said, even if you don't win any particular prizes, there's also free stuff they give out all the time, like shirts and stickers and so on. And also, it's just a great way to meet new people as well, because these events can attract large amounts of people. Even a small event is considered what we would consider, for example, last year involved almost like 100 people. So, like I said, it's a great way to meet new people that way. What a hackathon is not, interesting question. It's not about hacking, at least in the sort of ethically questionable sense. I believe an organization called Major League Hackers, who I'll talk about more throughout the rest of this, they describe it as an invention marathon, really. So another thing about it is it's hacking more in the sense of, somewhat haphazardly trying to get things together and functional. And that's in a short span of time in that way. It's also not an intense competition, like I alluded to before. It is fast-paced. You have a very short amount of time to work on this. But like I said, there's many ways to get something out of the event. And in fact, you don't even have to necessarily submit a project to be a part of the event itself. Many people, for example, I think there's a couple of alumni, UK alumni, who at our Cat Hack events, they show up at the event mainly for the programming competition. And so, like I said, whether you submit a project or not is ultimately optional, but it's, like I said, the best way to get the most out of the event. And also, it's not exclusive to programmers either. The nature of the event lends itself towards people who can program and know technology, but they're designed in a way to be open to people who don't have that experience before. Like I said, with the workshops, those are often engineered in such a way to be able to introduce people to some topics that they may be new to. And in principle, they're always open to anyone, not just CS and CS majors and programmers. Okay, so now we're on to the benefits. Why should people participate in a hackathon? Well, there's kind of a few reasons. Well, one, there's the prizes I mentioned before. Everyone loves free stuff, right? And apparently some larger hackathons even offer things like internships as well, if they're hosted by like a very large organization. And like I said, either way, you almost always get free stuff, even if you don't win. Next one is obviously improving your programming skills. After all, practice makes perfect. These events are a great excuse. The projects are low risk. If you don't get something working, it's not like working at a programming job or anything like that. If the project doesn't work, it's not going to be catastrophic. Worst case scenario, you got something that doesn't work, but you worked on it for a while and picked up some new skills along the way. Also, learning new technologies, as I said before, the workshops, and even just besides just the workshops, you can even just decide that, hey, I want to try this new thing. Maybe I want to program in Haskell or something like that. Then just try something new as part of your project. Again, they're low risk, so there's absolutely nothing wrong that's going to happen if the project ends up not working or something like that. Also, it's a great way to build teamwork experience. People can participate in these events solo, but given the time constraint of the event, they almost 9 times out of 10, I would say, people always form teams. And as a result of that, they always have experience working with team members, both with people they do know and also just random strangers as well. It's pretty common for people to actually form teams the day of the event. Like when they go there, there's even in fact a section of time usually dedicated for people just to meet, mingle, and kind of see if they can form teams around a certain project idea they all share. And they've alluded to this before. It's also, like I said, a great way to network with peers and other companies as well. So like I said, I kind of mentioned the idea of meeting with peers before, but with companies, many companies will sponsor these events all the time, and they usually send representatives as well to these events. So it's always a great way to, especially if you see some company, great way that if you see them sponsoring Hackathon, to go there and, amongst other things, be able to talk with them as well. And in fact, many activities at these events, both for peers and companies, the activities are designed to get people outside of the bubbles that they form, usually either their individual teams or just themselves. So the activities are designed in a way to get people interacting with each other. Okay, so why do organizations sponsor them as well? What benefits do they get out of it? Well, first, it's good for talent searching. Most of the people who go here, even though they are open, like I said, to people who aren't technically proficient per se, there's a lot of programmers and CS majors who show up to these events. So it's a great way for them, like I said, to meet these people, potentially find someone based on their project, if they make a really great project that wins like first place or something like that, to actually see like, oh, that's a good potential candidate that we might want. And also, many hackathons as well also offer services like collecting resumes for sponsors or collecting LinkedIn profiles and things of that nature. So it's, like I said, it's a great resource to just collect a lot of people's information in case they want to potentially be hired or something like that. Learning about upcoming trends as well. Like I said, since many of these events are aimed towards students and young professionals in that sense, companies who are there can easily see based on their project, is there any sort of new technology that maybe they don't know about? that these students are coming out, are learning like during college or just on their own, something that they don't know and that they may be able to pick up on for their use in the future. Another one is sort of promoting your API. This could also be just more software in general that you produce, but almost like I said, 9 times out of 10, it's always an API of sorts. Like I said, you can at these events as a sponsor, typically what they do is they lend access, through API keys for people to use their API. Like I said, so example might be like, Google Cloud or some services like that, where they can use those, and then as a side effect of those participants using those services, they can collect data on usage, how are people using their API, and they can also get feedback from people who are actually working on these projects, sort of like a real world use case, and collect data on how these APIs are actually working. It's also a great way for them to crowdsource new ideas as well. Sponsors can often also get individual prize categories that they can tailor around particular problems that they're facing, or again, like I said before, promoting or a prize category for using their API or solving a particular problem. And so with that, they can have like individuals just out in the world just try and create prototype solutions in a sense that they might be able to look at and like advance further. In fact, I think some companies, even like Facebook, for example, they have internal hackathons that are hosted and ran by their own employees, and their employees participate in it just to generate new ideas. And finally, also community engagement. These companies like to show, and people in turn like to see, that these companies are actually caring about the community. They're not just taking; they're actually giving back as well. This is especially true for non-tech companies, or rather companies that you don't think of as being tech companies, as maybe like some companies, for example, might be like Bayer or something like that, where their product isn't strictly technology per se, but their company is going to be using a lot of technology on the back end. So in this sense, being a sponsor for these events is a great way to illustrate that for these companies and organizations. And finally, why do people organize them? I will say first, go back to the sponsor benefits. The same reasons that organizations sponsor events is the same reason they want to host them as well. Like I said, alluding back to what I mentioned about Facebook and all that. But more particularly for the organizers themselves, is a great way to gain new contacts. Like I said, it's kind of true for sponsors, but it's particularly true for organizers, because the organizers have to obviously get in contact with all the sponsors and organize details on that. So it's a great way to find new potential partners in your organization in some sense. And kind of continuing on that, it's also a great way to help existing partners as well. It's very much, like I said, a win-win situation. The sponsors and the hosts and the hosts of the event both get something out of it. So it's a great way to help any existing partners you have as well. And finally, kind of almost like with the participants, in fact, it's actually a great way to do team building as well. If you have like a group of people in your organization you want to try and help build team skills with, organizing an event, a hackathon, is a great way to do that, because it takes months and months of work in a decent sized team to be able to pull it off successfully. Okay, so now with all that, how do you start participating in these hackathons? Where are some places to find them? Maybe some tips on that. There are 2 places I can recommend as like best places to find them. The first one is DevPost. That's the site. It is a site where a lot of these hackathons will post their information, and particularly it's designed for project submissions. So hackathons that normally, that's how they handle project submissions for their events normally, is through the site. And they will often post these events months in advance in some cases. So it's a great way to just go through and filter out and find like a huge list of potential hackathons coming up in the next few weeks, months, so on. a slightly better one I recommend as well is MLH sponsored hackathons. Like I said, I mentioned them before. They sponsor events themselves, and that almost acts like a sort of a seal of approval in some sense. And generally, in my experience, these events tend to be very much high quality events, and I can get more into reasons why that when I talk about organizing the events. But MLH themselves actually participate in the organization of the event itself. So you can always kind of, if you see an MLH sponsored event on their site, you can always be guaranteed that it's a pretty good event. And just some general advice for doing well if you're going to participate in these hackathons. Don't forget to sleep and eat. That sounds like a very basic tip, but you would be surprised at the amount of people, myself included, who will try and push through the entire time without at least sleeping. It is, some people can do that, but it's not a great idea. It'd be much better, especially if you're on a team, to have a planned schedule for when you're going to sleep. You see, always check the rules of the events. Again, it sounds basic, but you'd be surprised at the amount of times a project, I've seen it myself, where we've had to disqualify projects that otherwise look good because they didn't follow some technicality of the rules. They forgot to add something to their submission, or the video was too long or something like that. So yeah, always check that as well when you're going to participate in one of these events. Coming up with a rough idea of what you want to do before the event starts helps a lot, because it means you can spend more time working on it in the already short amount of time you have, rather than trying to plan some new idea. Keep in mind, though, events typically do have the requirement that you can't use code that you've made outside the event. So when you come up with a rough idea, don't try and think you can use code outside that. Otherwise, you will probably get disqualified. So keep that in mind. Also, prepare to submit your project well before the deadline. This is true of homework assignments in classes on Canvas, and this is true at hackathons as well. Like I said, especially if you're going through dev post, you want, that may be, especially like I said, in digital hackathons as well, that may be the only avenue you have to show off your project. And so if you're not careful about that, you may be slapdash, you may have errors in it. It may not look the way you want it, and that can be problematic in terms of sort of affecting your chances of doing well. And also, like I said, don't forget about the actual presentation part. This is more for physical events than digital events, because digital events usually just require a video, which, again, going back to my previous tip, you would ideally be starting on well before the deadline. But in a physical event, you would actually physically show off your project to a set of judges to let them see. So don't forget, like, you can spend plenty of time on the project, but don't forget that the presentation matters a good deal as well in order for, like I said, to get like a prize. And finally, sort of my bread and butter on this, how do I start organizing a hackathon? A few quick tips. I have 10 minutes left, so I might go through this pretty quickly. But first off, forming a good team is essential to this. Doing it early as you can is great. Suggestions for some roles. On always one is sponsorship searching, like just having a group of people who their job is to find organizations that might want to sponsor the event, getting in contact with them and negotiating like what they want to do at the event is a huge help. Budgeting and logistics, this one's a little bit more obvious, but yeah, you definitely want to have a budget plan, be able to make sure you have enough funds to do it, and have plans in place for certain emergency events. Like at physical events, for example, you might need to have an emergency fund for like food in case, like, for example, because you have to host food and stuff there as well, in case one of the deliveries doesn't come in for some reason. And so having a team on that helps a lot. Activities planner, this one's sort of what might be the manager, say you in this case, the person who's organizing this to lead. But I've also had experience that having at least one other person who is able to come up with ideas for these mini events and be able to help you with planning out the schedule is great as well. Social media, no matter how good you organize the event, if you don't have your presence online or where people can see it, no one's going to come. So you want someone posting about this as frequently as you can. Judging and rules, again, so this one's kind of obvious, but you definitely want to have a plan for judging in place, because judging can be one of the biggest pain points in organizing the events, because the event itself can run pretty smoothly on its own, but once it gets to judging, that's when the rubber hits the road in a sense, and that can be that's a big pain point for many hackathons. Event technology, just sort of people who can help set up with any technical aspects of the event. This is especially true for hackathons, since the event itself is going to be hosted through, say, like Discord or a live stream or something like that. You want to have people who know the ins and outs of these technologies, can help you do troubleshooting and all that. And finally, you want people on graphic design, because you definitely want to have your own graphics, not just obviously something you pulled off some generic site. You want to be able to stand out, and having people who can work on that is a great way to do that. I'd also recommend trying to give an Emulate sponsorship. Again, they sponsor these events as well. And so when they sponsor you, you get a lot of benefits out of it. Before the event, they can give you things like vendor discounts. They can give you templates for some documents, which these templates are actually free. They can give you like templates for your budget and plans and all that. They also do some promotion as well, and they can give you materials for workshop ideas as well. Day of the event, they will actually send a representative there, both physical and digital, who is someone who can help you do just about anything you want at the event. It's only a single person, but they're flexible and you can have them anywhere you need to. These people can also actually help judge. They can do basically everything. Like I said, they can judge, they can run an event, like the whole shebang. And they also actually do prizes as well. So in addition to any prizes you might have, they can also send out and provide some free items and items you can give out to the participants as well. And even after the event as well, they will also do surveys for you, and for digital events, they can help you handle shipping costs as well. So like I said, there's a bunch of boons from getting an Emulate sponsorship, so always try and do that as early as you can. And like I said, following the Emulate organizer guide is also a great way as well. The organizer guide is actually free. It's just on the internet. You can look it up right now. You don't require an Emulate sponsorship to follow these guides. Emulate does a lot of stuff for free. So even if you don't get the sponsorship, this guide, particularly the timeline in it for the events, they have a timeline for physical and digital events. Those timelines are a blessing in disguise, are a blessing, because it's just a month by month breakdown of everything you need to do and when you need to do it. From my experience, there is nothing that is not on that timeline. So yeah, definitely, if you get a hold of it, follow it. Also, like I said, I recommend, like a lot of other hackathons, they use Dept. I'd recommend using that. It's free for students and in-person hackathons. So it's no cost. It's easy to set up. There's no web programming involved in any of that. They have a web UI for it. And it includes tools you need for doing things like handling like project submissions, doing judging and assigning projects to prizes. Like I said, it handles all that. And one alternative set of tools I'd recommend, in case for some reason you want to organize an event and don't fall into the category that you can use Dept for free, there are a set of tools that MIT provides, because they host hackathons all the time. They call these Hack MIT tools. And like I said, they're an open source set of tools that handle a lot of similar things that you might get out of getting an MLH sponsorship and Dept. So doing things like getting like a registration portal to do signups, and a project judging system, things like that. And that really helps a lot, especially if you're just starting from scratch and don't have any software at all to begin with. And yeah, so I think that's primarily it. We have 5 minutes left, so I'm open to questions. And also, like I said, Cat Hacks, this is the 7th Cat Hacks. It'll be happening the 16th through the 18th. So if anyone's interested, we'll be there.
So let me ask questions about range of participants. Two parts of that. What is the range of ages typically, and what is the range of computer ability?
Right. Yeah. I will say the range, it typically depends. Some hackathons are targeted at specific groups, but I would say for a general hackathon group, they're definitely college age students. So something like 18 to 20 something, 18 to say 23. There are some hackathons that are much more open to like professionals as well. So that gets into a whole other possible range groups. But I would still say those groups tend to be, even in those cases of like open to professionals as well, those would still probably be in their 20s, maybe 30s. That's the standard range group. And as for what was the second question you were asking?
Range of ability.
Range of ability, right? Yeah, like I said, they're open to, like I said, anyone who's not a CS major. But yeah, it's not surprising that most people who show up are programmers in some sense. Either they are a CS major, or they are maybe some other major that and they learn programming on the side as part of their job, for example. We do get some people, just from personal experience anyways, there are some people who show up who don't have any programming experience, and those are the people who usually also find other teams as well. Those, I think one example might be, I think some people who have graphic design experience or some kind of UI experience like that, they may not have programming experience per se, but they can help in some capacity with the project itself, especially for the presentation.
For in-person hackathons, it sounds very much like organizing a conference. What do you do about lodging, about transportation?
Right. So I will say I don't have a lot of personal experience with that, because when I came in last year with organizing the hackathon. And so that was, right, that was in the middle of COVID. And so I unfortunately didn't have a chance to do that yet. We're planning on doing that next semester. But yeah, I will say for lodging, like I said, that it's a sort of a case by case experiment. I think what we do is I believe if I recall correctly, we offer, we rent out a venue. It's I can't remember exactly where the venue is. Like I said, I don't have personal experience with the physical events, but I do know I think we rent out some space and just designate that for like a sleeping area. But I think a lot of people, especially since the physical events tend to bring a lot of local people in, they usually will just like stay at their houses. And for the logistics on, what was the other logistic point?
The question was venue and lodging.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say for
transportation was the other. Transportation.
Oh yeah, transportation. That was it. Yeah, transportation. I know there are some. I think typically for transportation, we handle. There are some busing companies. Like I said, I can't remember the names off the top of my head, but there are some companies like that will basically let you rent out buses. I think for like I can't remember how much. It's like a couple $100 to rent out like one bus and have it rent somewhere. That is, yeah. For our experience, we're a much smaller hackathon, so transportation as well. Like with that, we usually only have to rent like a couple buses like that. I would imagine for larger hackathons, they do something similar to that as well, just renting out buses and having certain stations like that to help pick up people.
Yeah, I just want to mention when it comes to buses, there have been hackathons like Boilermake at Purdue. They'll send a bus to different colleges like Vanderbilt University, where they know that they're going to have a lot of students participating. So they usually do it like they'll see which universities are going to have a lot of people showing up, and then they'll reach out to those universities and see just how many people are going to show up, and they will send buses.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, very interesting. I'm a little too old, I'm afraid, to attend these, but If they had existed when I was a student, I most likely would have been involved.
Yeah, like I said, they are a very recent invention too. I think the earliest ones are probably like the late 90s. So yeah, they're a very recent thing.
It appears that usually they're over weekends.
Yes.
So 36 hours typically over a weekend. I've just been looking at some of the sites you suggested.
Right.
Great. Well, I'm sure that you'll be open to answering questions that folks might come up with. And you can sign up now for Cat Hacks, anyone who's interested and eligible. So thank you very much.